Hello, and thank you for joining this training. My name is Esme Smith, and I am one of the advisory teachers with EDIT, and my role is to help support those children with additional needs as they start FS2 and start their school journey and helping that be successful for them. A relatively quick session today, and the aims of this training are to just help us start thinking about some practical strategies and some changes and adaptations we can make to our early years environments to make this as enabling and as inclusive as we can for our FS2 pupils, and thinking about what's next and what we could do for the rest of this academic school year that helps support that transition. So before we get thinking about those practical strategies, I just want to remind ourselves and think about what do we mean by neurodiversity? And it's about that recognising and accepting that some people's brains work differently. They don't work wrongly or in a deficit way, but there's that difference in the way children learn. And it's recognising that and valuing that and trying to think about how those children learn best and how we can support this. Okay, so the majority of this training is going to be a whistle-stop tour through some practical strategies that I hope you can put in place easily, which help make your environment more inclusive and more accessible for those children with additional needs. Thinking about what are those reasonable adjustments that you can be making to meet the needs of these children and to make their learning more available to them. So the strategy that I probably spend the most of my time talking to schools about, which is one of the most effective things you can be doing for all of your learners, are making sure that you've put some visuals in place and that these are being used consistently and effectively all the time. There are so many valuable reasons for using visuals. So some of these examples that are used here, visuals are permanent. So there's that saying that when you say something, it goes in one ear and out the other. For some of our children who are struggling with their language processing or they have a speech and language delay, having a visual helps them remember what it is you're asking of them or what the instructions are. Visuals are really great at supporting children and when it comes to transitions. So I've spoken to lots of you about now and next boards and using visual timetables. These help children understand where they should be and what they're doing, and thinking especially about our year R children, it helps put those routines in place, those daily routines that we want them to be following and preparing for. And I always say with visuals, if you've got a child who's using a now and next board, it's great if that travels with them wherever they are in their environment around the school. So if they're going to the playground, take it with you. If they're in the classroom, take it with you. If they're going to the hall for lunch, take it. It will help those children move around the environment more successfully. Visuals help children see what you mean. You might have given a verbal instruction and to you that feels perfectly clear, but that child might not have a clue what you mean. So having a visual to help them see exactly what you mean can ease that understanding. Visuals help build independence. I'm going to talk more about independence later, but it's so important for lots of reasons. Independence helps children feel so much more confident in themselves and it helps build their self-esteem. Also, in a time at the moment where teachers and additional adults, we're thin on the ground. So if you have children who are able to do something independently, it helps you use your staff and your adults more dynamically. Visuals are transferable between environments and people. Now, I've spoken about different environments, but between people, that's really important as well. Now, your relationship with the children is so key, and that's so important to helping children, especially in year R as they start school, feel safe and secure. But the best will in the world, sometimes you're off poorly or you've had to be moved into a different classroom. And if you have a child who is so attached to you and will only do something for you, that can be really challenging for them then when you're not there. So if the thing that the child is attached to is the visual, anyone can step in and use that with them and that will support them. visuals have no attitude, they don't get fed up, they don't get annoyed, and visuals help reduce anxiety. It's really scary sometimes when you start school for the first time, so if you have a visual there so you can see what's coming up and what the expectation is, and when you get to have lunch and go to play and go home, that can really help our children feel safe and secure and ready to learn. And I'll just finish with that one in the middle there. Visuals help all students. Everyone likes a visual. Adults like visual. We like signs telling us where to go. You will not do any child in your class a disservice by using visuals and using them consistently. They help everyone feel safe and secure and ready to learn. I have included here some photos of different class timetables that I have taken whilst I've been out on my travels. Some go horizontally, some go vertically, some are with photos and some are with symbols or words. So you can use what you feel is best for your class, probably words and symbols. And what I would say is key is making sure that they're consistent across the school, so you're all doing it in the same way. You will see that some of these visuals have a finished box or a finished pouch. That tends to be the way that is recommended to use them now. So as you finish a session, you would take that lesson off your timetable and you'd put it in the finished pouch. It's really difficult to remember to do that sometimes. So when I was teaching, I always used to write it on my planning that I would start the session by showing the children the symbol, and then at the end of the session, I would make sure I had taken it down and it was finished. There's several reasons why taking it down is sort of best practice. When children are glancing up at the visual timetable, they then don't have to work out where they are or where they're up to, because whatever they're doing next will be the first one there because you've taken down everything previously. And also, if you have a child who really doesn't like a session, handwriting, phonics, maths, whatever it will be, even if they've finished it, if it's still up on the board, it's not nice to have to keep looking at it and remembering that you had to do that. So my advice would be making sure you remember to take them down after every session has finished. Like I mentioned, that's sometimes really difficult for one person to always remember that. So I would say my advice is to have a whole team approach around using the visuals. So it can be your other adults in the room. If they've spotted that you haven't done it, they can do it. It doesn't matter who does it. What I would say is that children don't pick up by osmosis to look at the visual timetable. So make it part of your discrete teaching that you are referring to it, and then the children will pick up that habit. I have also put on there a picture of a now and next. So you might have some children who can't access that visual timetable. It's too busy, there are too many symbols, and it's too overwhelming. So for them, you might want to use a now and next, which is more accessible for them, and it might be a personal one that is just for them. Sometimes the next can be something really motivating. It can be a reward. You're going to dangle that carrot so that child can see if they do one piece of work, then they're going to have something rewarding afterwards. So that's more likely to motivate them. I'm going to spend a little bit of time now talking to you about communication. And I just want you to take a moment to think about some of the children who are starting in FS2 who are maybe completely pre-verbal or have very minimal functional speech. How are they able to communicate their needs? Imagine how frustrating it must be not to be able to communicate, and consequently how many behaviours at challenge you see because of that. So thinking about a total communication environment, what have you got out and about in your foundation stage that helps those children communicate? Are you offering alternatives? It might be something like a picture exchange communication system. Something like a choosing board so that that child can learn to know the photos or the symbols of the things that they like or that they want and need, and that they can begin to request that. It might be something like an ALB, which is what this picture is. It's an aided language board. I know some schools or some services call them communication boards. And you'd have these for different areas and different activities for your classroom. This one here is a lunchtime one, but you might have one with the Play-Doh, you might have one with the small world, you might have one with your construction area. And they're all about giving those children access to some rich vocabulary and commenting about what they're doing. There is no pressure here to make a request. Some children freeze up when we're asking them to make requests because there's too much pressure. Communication boards are all about commenting alongside your play or alongside your activity. And it's giving those children access to lots and lots of vocabulary, which they will pick up and learn. Also, you might be using Makaton signing, which is absolutely great. Some children are more likely to sign than they are to verbally speak. I myself have picked up so much of my Makaton from Mr. Tumble or different YouTube videos. You don't have to go on the Makaton training. It's great if you can, but what I will say, there are so many YouTube channels where you can pick up different signs. With Makaton, you do not sign every single word. You just sign those core words of the vocabulary. My advice would be give it a go. Try your best, but think about how are we helping our children communicate. Communication is such an important life skill, and if we can start that down in foundation stage, we're giving our children the best start. Again, these are some photos that I've taken out on my travels. You can see they're very well used symbols here. So these are some different types of choosing boards. You've got one there which is on a folder. You've got another one there which is actually the inside door of a cupboard. And like I mentioned, choosing boards are a great way to motivate children to start communicating with us. Work out what your children with additional needs really like and maybe choose one or two of those things and put them slightly out of their reach. So being a little bit mean, and then help model with them using a visual, so like a symbol or a photo, or it might be an object of reference depending on the child's needs, how they would hand that over to you to request that thing. It's a really great way of tapping into children. If you have children who are very much in their own world and you're trying to tap in and get them to communicate with you, using a choosing board of motivating toys and items can be a way to start doing that. I want to talk to you now about regulation and helping our little ones deal with their big emotions and how they can manage these. So first of all, thinking about your whole school, is there already an approach that you use, and is there language that you use as a school? So again, making sure we're being consistent across the school is really important. Here you'll see a photo of zones of regulation, which is what I am more familiar with that I used at my previous school. We realised when we were holding circle times, a lot of our children just tell us they feel happy because they think that's the right answer. But actually, it's okay to feel these other emotions. So as you can see here with zones of regulation, there are the 4 different colours which represent the sort of different feelings you can have. And we would try with our children to model using this on an ad hoc basis. So you would just check in now and again with how you're feeling. That in itself is quite challenging for children to do, to be able to recognise how they're feeling and naming that. I often think about if you have butterflies in your tummy, that can be really confusing because it might be because you're nervous, it might be because you're excited, or it might be because you're hungry. So being able to recognise how you're feeling is really challenging. And then I guess once you've mastered that bit, the next stage is, well, what can you do when you feel that way? So as you can see on this photo here, beneath every colour, there's then a toolkit of things you can do. So for example, when I feel angry, I can, and then there'll be a suggestion of some things to do. Or when I feel sad, I can do these things. It's all about accepting those different emotions as they're all being okay. Sometimes it's totally okay to feel sad. Sometimes it's really appropriate to be excited and buzzing. But equipping children with the language to recognise how they feel and then what they can do when they feel that way is really important. A great way to do this is, as the adult yourself, model this yourself as well. Some days you feel tired, some days you're a bit annoyed. That's okay for you to model on there as well, those different emotions. And then a quick word about mindfulness and relaxation. So I've already mentioned how it can be quite anxiety inducing starting school. If you have children on an autism profile within your school, the likelihood is that they feel a high level of anxiety a lot of the time. So being able to teach those children to relax and be mindful and calm is a really important skill. And again, it's one of those life skills which is going to help prepare them for later life. So think about, as a school, what you're doing in terms of mindfulness. Do you do some kind of mindful movement or yoga? Have you got a couple of breathing exercises you can teach the children? Do they have time to be still and to relax? Again, it's worth thinking about and seeing if you can take on a whole school approach with this, but it's definitely something that you can start down in early years. Just a couple of quick and easy breathing exercises are a great strategy to use. So continuing what I've been saying about emotions and supporting children being able to communicate how they feel, it's really important to use the language of emotions. So equipping children with different visuals or the language of how they might be feeling and helping model that for them and using that language. It's all about accepting how children are feeling and helping them through that. And I always add at this point, be really careful not to tell children how they're feeling. What I mean by that, for example, if you've got a very dysregulated little child and you're telling them they're angry, that might make the situation worse. They might say to you, I'm not angry. So I always add, it's just be careful and mindful to use language such as, I wonder if you're feeling, or I think that you might be, just so that the children don't feel like you're telling them what they are. Going to spend some time now thinking about the impact of children's sensory needs. And I always say here that they are needs and they're not wants. So some children have to have their sensory needs in order to be ready to learn. So quite often we make the mistake of trying to get children to complete some work or a task, and then they have their sensory break or sensory movement afterwards. Actually, it works better if you can do it the other way round. If we're thinking about those behaviours for learning and wanting our children to be ready to learn, they must have their sensory needs met first. And things like sensory circuits are great, but they're not always doable. So thinking about what you can be doing to add those sensory elements throughout the day for your children. To that thinking then, thinking about how we can meet children's sensory needs naturally throughout the day, because sometimes with the best will in the world, when we've scheduled in some sensory breaks, they don't always happen, or we don't always have the equipment or the spaces to do it. So have a think about the different areas in your room, in your early years environment, and what sensory input are you offering. I like to think there's a way that you can add a sensory element to everything you teach. So think about how you're equipping the children to meet their sensory needs within your environment. What different things are you offering? I've taken some different language here from the Sensory Circuits book by Jane Horwood, and thinking about the purpose of different sensory inputs that you are doing with a child. So for some children, they need alerting, calming, or organisational. And this is not a one size fits all. It's a little bit of trial and error to work out what works for your children. And what I mean by that, consider a big bouncy yoga ball that some children like bouncing on. For one child, that might be really calming and help regulate them that way. But for another child, they might do that and it's really alerting for them. And then they're really buzzy and excited and happy, and we're trying to get them to focus on work. So think about what you're offering children, and it's not a one size fits all. Everyone might need something slightly different for their sensory input. And then the organisational there is thinking about, after you've done some kind of sensory activity, are the children then ready to learn, or are they so calm or so whipped up that they're then not ready to focus on some learning? So it's always best to try and end your sensory session with something organisational, something focusing that then gets them ready to learn. I spoke a little bit about independence earlier, and I said I would talk about it more now. So here are a couple of photos of work tables or workstations. And these are a way for children to learn to be independent. And you can see in this photo here of this little boy, he has a green start tray and he has a red finish tray. And he's taking out his work task. As you can see there, it's a shape sorter, completing it, and then he'll put it in the finish tray. So for some children, they are working at that level where it's one task and then it's reward. But over time, you try to build this up. So it might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of work they do before they then go for their reward break. As you can imagine, it takes a lot of adult work to get to this point. So it might be that you start with a learning together table. So you can see there that there's another photo with 2 chairs next to each other, one for the adult. Now, the adult here doesn't offer much verbal prompting. Try and stay as quiet as you can and maybe do a little bit of physical hand under hand prompting, and with time gradually reduce your input and your support so that the child is doing it independently. So why do we do this? It's so that children can be independent. We mentioned before about how that makes children feel really good about themselves, but also thinking about those behaviours for learning, being able to focus and complete a task. So the kind of tasks that you would do at a workstation are tasks that have a really clear start and stop so that the child knows when they're finished. It might be completing a puzzle and then they finished it and it goes in a tray, or finishing the sequence in a pattern, or building a Duplo tower and then it's finished. You can differentiate for the child individually. What they're not learning here is new knowledge, because actually the skill that they're learning is to be independent. So we want to reduce the cognitive load of adding anything else. So make sure all those tasks that the children are doing are things that you know they can do easily, because actually what they're learning is to be independent, and that's the important skill. I've just added this slide in here because it's a really quick tip. Of course, being independent is about being independent with your personal hygiene as well and those personal skills. So thinking about your toilet area, do the children know what to do when they get there? I have come across this before where a little boy was told to go to the toilets. He went in, turned around and came back out again because he didn't actually know what he was supposed to do when he was in there. So above your sink areas, have you got the instructions of how to wash your hands? And in the toilet cubicle itself, are there the instructions in what you need to do? It's a really handy tip, and if you haven't thought of it, it's something I really recommend. And another element of being independent is being able to independently access your environment and enabling children to do that. So just have a think about your own foundation stage classroom and your environment. Do your learners know where everything is in the room? Can they find the resources that they need, and do they have access with them? So have you labelled things? Is that with words and symbols, or is it photos? Do the children know where certain things are kept? And also thinking about zoning your areas. Is it really clear when you look at your environment where the role play is, where the calm area is, where the book corner is? Have you zoned that clearly for the children, and what the expectations are in each of those areas as well? We are really focusing on early years here. So I want to think about how we're going to support the children accessing their play and accessing continuous provision. What I do want to add here is that the strategies I'm going to give you coming up are all about supporting children further their neurotypical play skills. But these are neurodiverse children that we're talking about. So I just wanted to add that it is absolutely okay for some children if they want to spend time doing what they like. So without sounding stereotypical, if you have a child that likes ordering and lining things up, give them time to do that, because that's what's helping regulate them and helping them feel calm and happy. And it's really important children are happy in school. Having said that, we also want to then further those play skills when they can. I want to ask you if this sounds familiar to you. So some of your children with additional needs will find accessing the continuous provision quite challenging. So you often either have that child who flits from everything, from one thing to another, and never settles at anything because they don't know what to do when they get there. Or you have that other child who stays at the same thing for the whole time because that's what they like and that's what they know. It might be something like the sandpit, or it might be construction. So it's just worth thinking about how you are enhancing your provision and how you're scaffolding that learning to be able to help the children access it more effectively. Actually the photo of a whole class choosing board that was up on the interactive whiteboard during a continuous provision time. And actually what it does in a way is it limits the amount of resources that you have out so that you can focus on really rich and important play on the things that are out. So I would always recommend it's much better to focus on teaching children skills for 5, 6, 7 different things rather than trying to attempt everything. So if you reduce and limit the choices slightly, you can spend more time teaching the skills in those areas. It's all about scaffolding the children's learning. Next, about play scripts or play sequences, you might have heard them be called. These are great visuals and a great way to scaffold the small world that you might have in your classroom. So it might be that whatever your topic is, you then have some small resources out to do with that. It might be pirates, as the example is here. It might be fire engines. It might be babies. It might be cars and vehicles. So when you have this small world out, do the children know how to play with that appropriately, and do they know what to do when they get there? So a play script is a great way of introducing 4 or 5 things that the children can do with the small world. Of course, it takes some adult support to first model this and implement this, but then you can leave this in the small world as part of your continuous provision, and the children should use it by themselves to then know what they can do when they get there. Otherwise, they may not have been able to access this previously. So what's next? That's as many strategies as I'm going to talk through today, but there are so many more that I would like to talk to you about. So if you have a child in your foundation stage 2 who is an edit child, there's a chance that I might be coming out to visit you. But there are lots of you and lots of schools, and there's only one of me, so I might not be able to get round to everyone. What I would say is I'm always happy to meet with people over Teams or over the phone or emails. You can always catch me for some informal advice and for a chat, and I can see what I can do to help. Also, there are so many different strategies and pieces of advice as part of the Edit Toolbox. There is also an Edit YouTube channel with videos modelling and showing how you would use different resources too. As I mentioned, I may not be able to get out to all of you individually, so think about any training that you might like. I've already predicted that there might be some training around regulation that would be useful and managing behaviours that challenge, so hopefully that's coming up later in the term. But what else is there you would like? Would your school benefit through some more training around learning through play or some sensory training, visuals? Really, I'm quite flexible here and I'm open to any suggestions. So if you think of something that your school would like, please do get in touch and we can see what would work. For listening to that training and wishing you the best of luck for this school year ahead. Please do get in touch if I can be of any help at all. So you can contact me through the Learning Support Services, and I look forward to hearing from you.